Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Before we begin, we wish to acknowledge the land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, it is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are, and thank you for joining us. My name is Mary Overholtz, and I have the pleasure this morning of welcoming Dr. Pauline David, who recently completed her PhD at the Université de Nantes in France, where she studied the impact of 3 models of vocational preparation on students with learning difficulties. Thank you for joining us today, Pauline. We're looking forward to hearing from you about vocational preparation in schools and colleges in France. I think before we get started, Gavin is going to speak briefly to the speaker series at which you are in attendance today.
Thank you very much, Mary. This speaker series is part of a research program that we are conducting on the social role of colleges. The role of colleges is not very well understood or institutionalized. There's a very strong idea of the university, and notwithstanding there is a great variation in what universities do and their roles and other characteristics over time, between countries, and indeed even within the same country, there's still a very strong idea of the university. So one of our aims in this series and in this research program is to understand what may be the idea of the college, the institution of vocational colleges, and how it may be characterized and indeed developed. The second aspect of the series is to understand the social role of colleges. So one of the institutional ideas of universities is that they're teaching, research and service, and they have a strong social role in their community, in their region, in their country, and perhaps more broadly. When people think of the role of the vocational college, they think of it very much as preparing graduates for work. And I think that is true in North America. Or they think of it in terms of preparing workers for business. And I think that's the way it's more emphasized in the UK and Australia. But either way, it's their development of human capital that is emphasized. And we are wondering whether there might be a complementary social role that colleges may serve. But to get to that understanding, first we need to understand vocational colleges, vocational education, skills formation in other jurisdictions. And it's for this reason that we're pleased to invite Dr. David to talk to us about vocational education in La Belle France.
Thank you, Gavin. If you have a question during Pauline's talk, you can put it into the chat and I will monitor the chat and invite you to ask your question at the conclusion. And at the moment, I'll turn it over to Pauline and thank you again for joining us this morning.
Thank you to all of us and thank you for the invitation. I'm going to try to present the French school vocational system. And since a few years, we try to work on the link between that we called baccalaureate less 3 years and plus 3 years. So I try to respect this idea. So I will start with the global organization, then I will focus on specific systems. So I use the ISCD classification in order to be more understandable. So at level 2, that we call college, for us, it's lower secondary education. So we finish with a diploma we call brevet des collèges. It's supposed to be necessary to have this brevet des collèges to continue in upper secondary education, but in reality, you can pursue without this diploma in some vocational high schools. Then in level 3, upper secondary education, we have 3 or 4 pathways. You can go in vocational high school, we call it lycée professionnel, and we have several diplomas, CAP, BP, mention complémentaire, certification, Bac Pro, etc. I will explain later. You can go in technological high school, so it's sort of midterm between vocational and general high school. And we have a specific baccalaureate for that. It's called Bac Techno. And you have also general high school. And finally, you also have apprenticeship center in which you can prepare most of the diploma except general and technological baccalaureate. Then you can prepare every other diplomas. We do not have level 4. And we continue with level 5. And then we have, in this short cycle of education, we have 2 ways. You can go in IUT, University Institute of Technology, or STS. And if IUT are very separate from university, it's a specific establishment, buildings, but STS are housed in general high school or technological high school. And then you have in university sort of vocational bachelor. We call it licence professionnelle. So just the main organization. For the upper secondary education, we welcome young people from 15 to 18, sorry. And so, as I said before, you have 3 possibilities. You can go to general high school, and it allows people to go after that or to longer higher education studies. You can go to technological high school. You can pursue to higher education, mostly to technological higher education, and you have vocational high school. And in theory, every type of baccalaureate allows students to go to university. But in reality, if you have a vocational baccalaureate, it's quite complicated to access to university. You have the right to, but you may not have the academic abilities to success in university. And maybe I should go back a bit. You have a certain sort of hierarchy between those baccalaureate, and general education is considered better than vocational high school. And this is because we have that we call academic convention, and it's we prefer to use our school system to rank people. So we want to have the excellent one, and we rank on the basis of the level in academic teaching. And after the 19th century, we changed a bit our vocational pathway, and we did that we call a process of schooling. So we try to put the vocational pathway in our school system. And this process emphasizes the place of the academic convention in the vocational pathway. Before we did that, vocational pathway had a specific culture, a specific way to consider knowledge, to consider the transmission of the trade. And with this process of schooling, the place of the academic convention is very stronger in the vocational pathway. So this phenomenon of hierarchy between the different ways is stronger too. We have different stakeholders in the vocational track, as the Ministry of National Education, Ministry of Agriculture, of Labor, and also social partners. To build a new diploma, for example, we have a representative of employers, of trade unions, and of Ministry of National Education. To be simple, the Ministry of National Education is in charge of most of the vocational diploma, but some of them are under the responsibility of the Ministry of Agriculture. And the Minister of Labor keep some specific certification. But it appears that in some vocational schools who welcome young people with very strong difficulties with the school system, they try to prepare young people to a diploma of the Ministry of Labor, because it's only based on the professional practice, and there is no evaluation of the academic skills. So we saw there is a sort of a play between those different diplomas, and yeah. It's all of this is formal education. We have school-based training or apprenticeship training. The school-based training is welcome in vocational high school or in production schools. Apprenticeship is welcome in apprenticeship centers, plus in campaign training. But since the new reform, because we love reform, we can have apprenticeship in vocational high schools too. And IUT, STS, and university can welcome both of those systems, school-based and apprenticeship training. We emphasize the benefits of the apprenticeship system. So our politics tried to increase the place of the apprenticeships in a vocational pathway. So, as I said, we have a lot of diplomas in vocational high school, and it's a bit difficult to explain with the ISCD classification, because in France we have a little bit different classification that we call level 3 in ISCD. In France, there is a 2 level. So for us, certificat d'aptitude professionnelle, I will call it CAP. It's in 2 years, and it's the the more little diplomas we had in the system. And after this diploma, you can go to some other specification or some other diplomas. So you can have mention complémentaire or certificat de spécialisation, which are both some specification to have a sort of bonus in your about your first diploma. You can also pursue with a brevet professionnel, which is in 2 years, and it's after a CAP. And it's quite interesting because when you go in vocational high school, you have to choose between CAP plus eventually brevet professionnel or vocational baccalaureate. And it's quite same level at the end if you have a BP or a vocational baccalaureate, but it's not for the same perspective. So, for example, if you are in, you want to become a cook, a master of cook master, sorry. If you want to be a chef in your kitchen, it's better to do a CAP and after that a brevet professionnel. But if you want to run a restaurant and be able to run the administrative paper, etc., it's better to choose a vocational baccalaureate in cooking, because it's not exactly the same knowledge and same courses. And so you have to be really, you have to know really well the system to choose in a right way. And to understand this sort of similarity between those two paths, it's because a few years ago, vocational baccalaureate was in 4 years. So doing a CAP plus brevet professionnel was exactly the same than doing a vocational baccalaureate. And now it's different because we tried to have a sort of parity of esteem, yeah, and we change a bit things to have this baccalaureate in 3 years, as same as a technological or a general baccalaureate. And we also have a level 5, so with brevet de technicien supérieur, which is housed in a general or technological high school. The purpose of this diplomas is to go to the marketplace. If you want to do higher education, it's better to choose DUT in IUT. But DUT disappeared this year. We will have that we will call BUT, Bachelor Universitaire de Technologie, and this new diploma is level 6. So it's completely changed the role of IUT. And I'm not sure that IUT will be the same as college for Canadian people, because this idea to go to level 6 really changes the perspective. And I will explain what after a while. So I got some data, and I'm sorry, but all of them are in French, but I will translate as best I can. So to understand, we have to know which type of people go to vocational pathway. So these draws show that the entries to vocational high schools goes down since 15 years. We do not have that much girls in vocational training, and we can explain it's well, girls have a better success in general education. And the second point is in vocational training, we have a lot of production trades and not service trade. And there is less girls in production trade. Yeah. And if we look at the educational background of the students, students, we can see that if we look at the CAP diploma, so the first diploma of the vocational pathway, we have a lot of students from that we call troisième is the last year of our college. Okay, so troisième SECPA means young people with difficulty with the school form. Ulysse is for disability, people with disabilities, and the fourth line, second GT, it's young people in general high school, first year of general high school. And so to be more clear, the first third lines show us that young people in CAP are people with a lot of school difficulties, and they come from specific class. But in second, so second is the first year of vocational high school in this case, we don't have those children from those specific class. You see 0.9, 0.5, there's most of it, and no child from disability studies or difficulty school. There is really a sort of a hierarchy between those two diplomas. And as I said before, we emphasize the part of apprenticeship in the vocational pathway. And the apprenticeship is more common in CAP than in vocational baccalaureate. And if we look at the next year, so 2020, we can see it very clearly. For CAP, we have 55.8 people in apprenticeship and only 8.3 in vocational baccalaureate. So you see the difference. It's quite big. This graph shows us the difference in the apprenticeship between the production trade and the service trade. And so we have a little bit more young people in production trade than in service. Yeah, it's quite the same. I will pass because, okay. And the new phenomenon is that apprenticeship is growing better in higher education than in vocational education. And we try to have a better perception of the apprenticeship by increase it in higher education. So if we look at the graph for BTS or DUT, the part of the apprenticeship is very important. And we also have it in master or PhD. But if we look at the numbers per level, the part of level 3 is still more important in apprenticeship, but it's less well perceived. So you can see CAP, BP, Bac Professionnel, all level 3. If we add it, it's between 200 and 300. And if we look at level 4, it's only 100. And for levels 5 and 6 is quite less. I will focus a bit about STS and EUT, so the short circle tertiary education and the type of students we had in those paths. So if I take STS, so to remind, STS is welcome in technological or general high schools. The students continue their studies after the baccalaureate, and half of the people in STS are from vocational baccalaureate. So this graph shows us excuse me. Okay, this graph shows which choice did vocational baccalaureate after having the baccalaureate. So you can see that 7% goes to licence 1. Licence 1 means a university. So 7%, it exists, but it's quite few. And 24% go to STS. So they try to have a diploma of short tertiary education. And we also have some that try to go in other higher education formation. It's 6 and 3%. And the gray part, it's people who do not go to higher education. So it's a bit less than the middle of all of those students. And if we look from the point of the STS students, vocational baccalaureate represent 1/3 of the students. And it becomes quite interesting because at this point, because those section of STS, they had to be designed to welcome people from vocational high school. It was a purpose of those sections to welcome people from technological high school and vocational high school. And if we look at the tables, we show that so 1/3 come from vocational high schools, 1/3 from technological high school, and 18% comes from general high school. So it seems that those specific pathways are used by students from a general high school to build a certain relation to higher education. If we look at the success of those students from the vocational baccalaureate, it seems that half of them obtains their diplomas in 2 years, and it's less successful than for other baccalaureates. The dropouts are more frequent, but less. So there is a lot of dropouts for vocational baccalaureate in general, but in STS, it's less important. So it seems that STS succeed to keep those vocational baccalaureate. And so for UT, it was founded in 1966, and it's outside of university, and it was very something new at this moment, because they tried to creating a sort of a university system to train people who to take their terms, who do not want to become a teacher in high school. They try to train a sort of a manager, middle manager. And pedagogically, IUT was at the crossroad of education, secondary and higher education, and needs of the economic world. They tried to mix abstract and concrete teaching by using project-based pedagogy and internship. And it was the beginning also of technical education at the university. And one of the main ideas was to obtain the access to higher education to less privileged social classes. And they actually leave a very strong mutation by passing from the DUT to the BUT in 3 years in level 6. And I can't say a lot of things about BUT because it's very new. It will start in September. So in IUT, we had more students in service than in production. So you can see it's quite the inverse than in vocational high school. And if we look at background, the school background of the students, we have very few vocational baccalaureate. You can see general baccalaureate, it's the first line. If we look at the total, we have 2/3 of the students in IUT, which are from general baccalaureate. 1/3 is from technological high school, and only 1.5% is from vocational high school. So IUT is not for vocational high school. It's really for technological and general high school. And at the beginning, it was not designed for general high school. it was designed from people from technological or vocational high school. And you can see the change. And studies about IUT said that students from a general high school use IUT to build another relation to higher education. It seems that it's students with some difficulties, but not that much, and it's a sort of a loser of those competition to access to the more prestigious part of our higher education system. So they prefer to go in IUT because it's less, it's more frame. You have a lot of teachers for a group of students, and it's very small units, so you can be well, well framed, and it's more secure for those students. But the consequence of those student choice is that there is no place for vocational students because the school files of students from vocational high school couldn't be able to fight with the school files of students from general high schools. So to conclude, in France, if we look at all of the upper secondary education, we have 1/3 of all the students who are in a VET program. Our vocational high school had a lot of reform recently, which try to play on the socialization of the students to respond to the need of the labor market. And and yeah, we do not have that much research about vocational pathway. It's not we are very characterized by this social hierarchy between the different pathway. And we suffer a bit of this strong legitimacy of the academic convention. And we have some difficulties to have a certain vision of an excellent vocational pathway. I will finish here, and thank you for your attention. I hope my English was not that terrible.
Thank you, Pauline. That was really informative, and your English was excellent. So thank you for speaking in English. We do have a few questions already in the chat. So we'll start with Anne, who is asking about program advisory committees. So Anne, I'll invite you to unmute and ask your question.
Sure, thank you. I've got about 1 million questions, but I'll start with that first one. Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. I was wondering, the French education system seems to be very sort of highly organized and highly centralized, but I wondered whether you had anything similar to what we have in the college system in Ontario with what we call program advisory committees. And each particular program, a vocational skills program here, includes representatives from industry as well as students and faculty representatives. And so I was wondering, do you have them? And if you do they include representatives from industry? And do they play, if any, a role in the curriculum design? Thank you.
Okay, so you're right. We are really centralized. Representative of the market, the work market, have a place in the negotiation for the curriculum, but it's not at the local level, it's at the national level. And yes, there is some people from industry, but not only industry, it's in every domain, every type of sectors. And well, yeah, we call it, I don't know how to translate, it's called it a commission paritaire. Okay, and we have so people from the Ministry of Education, people from the market, and people from trade unions. And all those three parts negotiate for diplomas and curriculum. But at the end, it seems that it's Ministry of Education which has the last word. And it seems also that in some times of our history, I don't know how to say, for example, when we create vocational baccalaureate, it was a strong debate because was it really necessity to have a baccalaureate in a vocational pathway? So we decided to create it, and at the beginning it was a demand of the industry sector, but they didn't want to assume the creation of this bac and to take in charge this creation. So they quite decide to let the Ministry of Education deal with that. And yeah, sometimes there's sort of arrangement between all of those partners. It's not that clear.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. The next question comes from Noah.
Thanks for your presentation. I'm Noah, an incoming doctoral student at OISE, and so I'm not too familiar with the area more generally, but I had a question about the academic convention that you mentioned kind of dominated the French schooling system. And you mentioned that the vocational system is almost relegated to a secondary position, so across the schooling system more broadly. But I was wondering, within the vocational track, how does the academic convention function differently in terms of social or cultural or economic terms? So for instance, like, does academic standing matter differently to vocational students, or how does it, like, what kind of function does it play within that track?
Okay. Yeah, it's a really good question. It was a subject of my PhD, to be honest. So yeah, in theory, we could think that the academic level is less important in a vocational high school. For example, if you want to go in a higher diploma, vocational diploma, we could suppose that your level in vocational courses is more important. But in reality, if you are not good in French or in mathematics, you can't go in higher vocational diploma, even if you are really good in your trade. So it's one example of this hierarchy. But another one is in vocational high school, for example, you have teachers for general courses and for vocational courses. and there are some room to rest. But most of the time, the restroom are separate between general education and vocational education. Yeah, because we don't mix people. And it's another example of this hierarchy. And I can find a lot of that. But, another point is teacher of vocational courses are people from the workplace. Most of the time they had a first career in a certain trade, and then they change to become teacher. I think it's quite common. And they do not perceive themselves as teachers as the same rank as general teachers. You see, they are from the workplace and not from studies. So, and this, there is a problem of esteem, of parity of esteem between those two parts. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's really interesting. I won't jump in line. Gavin, you were next asking about STS.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Dr. David, pour votre présentation. C'est très général de votre part. Can you please describe the institutions which teach the section de technicien supérieur?
Okay. Okay. Les sections de techniciens supérieurs, STS, are welcome in general or vocational high school. The teachers are teachers of general high schools. So it's under the responsibility of the Ministry of Education. Yeah, it answer to your question?
Yes, thank you very much. So the institutions which have a specialized role in advanced vocational education are best IUT.
Yeah, it's not that easy to answer. I'm not sure to really understand your question, because what do you mean by institution?
Maybe I explain about North America.
Yeah.
We have institutions which we call colleges.
Yeah.
Which teach for 2 years post-bac.
Yeah.
And they different in different countries, but in Ontario, they teach mostly vocational qualifications.
Okay.
They specialize in teaching vocational qualifications for mid-level technicians, both production and social. So we have an institution in Canada which is strongly identified with, associated with, specializes in vocational preparation, and we call them colleges, or in the US, maybe we call them community colleges.
Okay, yeah, I see. Okay. At the beginning, IUT was inspired by community colleges. So sure, there is a link, but actually, I'm not sure, because in IUT, we have most people from technological baccalaureate, and technological baccalaureate, it's not exactly vocational studies. It's a bit different. It's a bit more intellectual. And I think that this function you have in a college in France, it's quite split in a different way. We can host it in university, in STS, in UIT, and depends of the type of specialty.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Gavin. Catherine has the next question.
Thank you, and thank you for that very interesting discussion. And I'm trying to mirror what you're talking about and what we experience in the Ontario colleges. And one of the issues that we have is that, not issues, but a reality, is that in the Ontario colleges, the colleges serve lower socioeconomic status students much more so than universities. And there's a little bit of that prestige or esteem that you were difference that you were talking about as well. So my question was, what kind of supports does the system provide for students who come from lower socioeconomic status, who may have, you know, academic abilities, but not the economic ability to enter the higher levels? What kind of supports are there available, first of all? And then I have a second question is, to what extent are there pathways to graduate education at which level? So double questions, please.
I didn't understand the second question.
What extent or how easy is it for students to move from a baccalaureate to graduate studies, master's or doctoral studies? You did mention it once briefly, but
For vocational baccalaureate.
yes, from a vocational baccalaureate to graduate studies at the master's level or even PhD level, please.
Okay. So for the support for low social economic status, it's quite simple, as there is no institutionalized support. So we have a certain sort of support, but it's based on the individual responsibility of teachers. So in vocational high school, for example, it's well known to be a place where teachers try to support students more than in general high school, where we have more higher social stages. And we have a certain system of scholarship for low social stages, and but yeah, it can help, but it's the only way we support people. And to access to graduate education, if I remember well, I think that only 3% of people who, if we take people from vocational high school who go to university, I don't remember how many tries to access to university, but I think that it's only 3% of those students who can go to bachelor level. So it's quite
small.
nothing.
Yeah.
So PhD, I can not imagine.
Yes. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Anne has the next question.
I'm wowed. I think that's very, very interesting that the numbers are quite small. It seems to me, and I hope I'm understanding correctly, that the system is not just very organized, but it's very socially stratified, and that streaming takes place at a very early level. So I come originally from the UK. When I first came, my school system, we had an 11+ exam, which was, you know, the gateway to streaming. And some people were then sort of geared towards vocational schooling, and others to a grammar school system. That's within the public education system, the non-fee paying education system. That's changed in more recent years, so that it creates more opportunities for participation in higher education. But if I'm understanding correctly, that it's still very rigid in the French system. But I wondered whether and I think it's particularly important given the mobility patterns that we have, and France, as is Canada, as is the United Kingdom and many parts of Europe, do have people migration. So I wondered whether there was any opportunity to re-enter the system as adults and or even to move into a different level as an adult once sufficient occupational skills have been gained. So it's that entry, that flexibility within the adult sector.
There is some possibilities of flexibility. For example, you can, even if you do not have the right diploma, you can go to university by using some bridge or some. You can do just 1 year to show you have the level or to have some, yeah. So you can use some bridge, but if you have a work occupation, you can also follow the university courses, but you are not, you do not have the obligation to be present in all courses, but in fact, those students have some difficulties to success at the university. So yeah, it's a bit, yeah, it exists. You can try, but yeah. And to go back to the last question, in reality, we tried to open the access to graduate diploma in university, but if you remember, we built some specific ways. You come from vocational or technological high schools, you go to STS or maybe to IUT. If you are from general high school, you go to university or that we call CPGE, classe préparatoire aux grandes écoles. And for example, classe préparatoire aux grandes écoles is a good example of our difficulty to open higher education, because we are those specific formation welcome quite only people with a higher social economic status. And we tried to socialize those public, but by using some restriction. For example, I said a word about our scholarship system, scholarship, yeah. And we tried to ask to CPGE to take 1/3 students from with a scholarship. So it could be a good way to have this democratical opening, but in reality, they take this 1/3%, but only at the lower level of the scholarship. You see, so we try, but.
That's very interesting. It's past 11 o'clock, and I think we had only booked until 11, but we have a lot of questions still to answer. Are you okay to keep going, Pauline?
Yeah, we can. I'm a bit tired, but I can try.
Okay. Very well. Lisa has the next question.
Thank you, Pauline. Yes, you must be very tired doing this in another language. It's been a wonderful presentation. Thank you. My question is about the preparation that is needed to become a teacher in a vocational high school or in an IUT. You know, what is the nature of the preparation for teachers to become vocational teachers?
Okay, it's completely different for vocational for teacher in vocational high school or in IUT. If you want to become a vocational teacher in vocational high school, you have to pass a national exam, which is prepared in a specific school for teachers. We call it SP. And if you want to be a teacher in IUT, even in vocational courses, you have to be have a PhD and to pass the national exam to become a teacher in university. So it's a complete different system.
But it seems in both cases. So to become a teacher in a college here, you don't have to pass an exam to be a teacher. You just have to have vocational preparation. So if you want to teach electricians, you know, for the most part, you should have been an electrician. So what is the nature of the vocational requirements for teachers?
For vocational teachers in vocational high school, you have to have some experience in your trade.
Yeah,
I think it's at least 3 years, or you're not. It's not an obligation. If you have a diploma from higher education in those professional sector, it's enough. You just have to pass the exam and you can become a vocational teacher. But I said a word about apprenticeship system. You can, for electrician, for example, you can become a vocational trainers in apprenticeship centers without any diplomas, because it's a more system marchand.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit different. So,
yeah.
Okay. Thank you. The next question is from Farhad, but it's asking you to compare Germany's system with France's system. And I think that might be a lot for you to take on today. And I will just let everyone know that we do have a speaker from Germany coming this fall. So perhaps we could defer that question, Farhad. Is that okay? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Farhad. The next question is from Stephanie. There you are, great.
You're on mute, Stephanie, can't hear you.
You're not muted, but we can't hear you.
That's weird. I'm not muted on my side.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's my headset that is being weird, but I've just connected it now. So nice to see everyone, and thanks for a great presentation. I thought I knew a bit about the French system, and I realized in the presentation how little I know. And I was especially interested in the large number of qualifications and different types of programs, which I found just fascinating. And I was wondering the extent to which those relate to license to practice requirements in different occupations. Because my understanding, and I read a bit about this when I was researching qualifications frameworks, and I read a few papers on the French qualifications framework, is that it was quite related to occupational regulation. And so there was a reasonably strong relationship between, this was my understanding, I might have got it wrong, between the occupational regulation system and the educational qualifications. So I was just wondering if that proliferation of types of qualifications is because of occupational regulation or license to practice requirements in labor markets. And I had another question, but I think I'll just leave it at that, because otherwise we're really asking too much from you, Pauline.
Thank you. Okay, depends of the sector, mainly. Yeah. For example, to open a restaurant, you do not have the obligation to have a cook qualification. It's quite weird, but it's like that. But for some other sectors, you have to have a specific qualification, and sometimes it's because of the history of the sector. And yes, I think the qualification is still strong to regulate the offer and the demand But we also have this movement of massification of the education system, and this we increase the level of the qualification in every sector or at every level. So, for example, for some occupation, maybe it's enough to have a CAP or even a brevet professionnel, but now people who have this specific occupation have a bachelor or even sometimes a master. So it's complicated also, and each student try to go further and to have a higher qualification.
Thank you.
That's very interesting.
There's one last question from Jakob.
Is it the last one? So, first of all, thank you so much, Pauline. This was so, it was fabulous. I mean, I'm supposed to be a neighbor as a Swiss, and I learned so much today, and it was really perfect speech for me. Thank you so much. And I really like this French sociologist, François Dubé, who described the French system and their workaround with a meritocracy or issues around equality of opportunity as une fiction nécessaire. And it became very clear at what point you can pinpoint down this fiction nécessaire of the of meritocracy. But my question is a bit different, because I was really stunned by the numbers of the IUT students. So if I got that right, you described that 2/3 of the students at IUTs have a general baccalaureate background, no? And the third, a technical high school background, I think.
No.
Oh.
It's 1.5% of the IUT students which are from vocational baccalaureate.
Yeah, but most of the students at the IUTs have a general baccalaureate background, right?
Yeah.
And I was wondering, when comparing the STS and the IUTs, is there like a political discussion whether the right students enter the respective schools, or isn't there? Because in Switzerland there is a huge discussion about if the right students enter either universities of applied sciences or other professional schools.
Yes. Okay, at the beginning, STS was for vocational high school, and IUT was for technological high schools, and university for general high school. It was the idea of the first idea. But now, so as I showed, it's different. We have in IUT some general baccalaureate, and there is a consequence. It's that in STS we have technological baccalaureate who comes to have a place, and they are better than vocational baccalaureate. So it's a sort of
yeah. And is this regarded from a political perspective as a problem, this phenomena, or not really? Because the lines of the stratifications are somewhat blurred now, right?
Yeah, for now, I think that the political area are most concerned by this idea of bac less 3, bac plus 3. Okay. So they try to build, for example, in IUT, to pass from DUT to BUT, to build this articulation. And maybe when we will finish this building, we will look at those orientation. But for now, yes, it's a question, but not the main one.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions. And thank you, Pauline, for bearing with us for an additional a chunk of time in English, because as Elisa said, it must be absolutely exhausting. So thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. Gavin has been putting the information on the next speakers into the chat for your information, and the CIHE website is there where all of the information and registration is kept. Yes, and Stephanie says it's so rare to get a systematic overview like this. And I agree with everyone. I've read a lot about France's system this year, and I could not sort it out on my own. So we really appreciate you coming to bring your experience and your research with us today. So thanks again to everyone. Join us again on June 22nd to hear about Switzerland and with Jakob, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Pauline. Thank you very much.